Chapter 22. Synthetics Attack. Morning light streamed through the simulated skylight at Paddy Tar's Irish pub, casting a warm glow over the wooden tables and brass fixtures. The food court on Deck 1-1 had been designed with Earth's diverse culinary traditions in mind, but Paddy's had quickly become the unofficial meeting spot for the station's leadership, partly for the authentic Irish breakfast, partly for the privacy afforded by anonymity in crowded places. Jay slid into the well-used seat, joining Dr. Jackson, Jack, Russell, Mitchell, and Joel. Despite the early hour, the tension around the table was palpable. 3 days of hunting synthetics between decks had left everyone sleep-deprived and on edge. "Orders up," called Paddy herself, a transplant from Dublin who'd parlayed her cooking skills into one of the station's most successful businesses. She approached with a tray balanced expertly on one arm, her red hair pulled back in a practical bun. "Full Irish for Dr. Jackson, steel-cut oats for Jack, breakfast burrito for Jay, fruit plate for Russell, pancake stack for Mitchell, and—" she placed an enormous plate in front of Joel, "the hunter's breakfast for our newest administrator in training." Joel eyed the mountain of food: eggs, sausages, black pudding, bacon, potatoes, mushrooms, tomatoes, and 3 types of toast, with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "I might have over-ordered." "Growing boys need their strength," Paddy winked, setting down a carafe of coffee before departing. "She always says that," Joel muttered, spearing a sausage with his fork. "I'm 28. "But you look 15. I'm surprised you don't have pimples." Dr. Jackson smiled slightly as he meticulously separated his eggs from his beans. "Briefing time. Mitchell, you're up first." Mitchell paused mid-bite of her pancakes, swallowing quickly. "Shuttle armaments are complete. All 86 operational shuttles now carry kinetic weapons packages, a mix of rail guns and high-velocity projectile launchers. Actually, they're modified shotguns with variable load packages. We're maintaining 20 shuttles on constant patrol, with crews rotating every 6 hours. "And the training?" Jack asked, stirring honey into her oats. "VR Deck has been running combat simulations around the clock. Every pilot and weapons officer has logged at least 15 hours in simulated space combat. We're focusing on coordinated response to multiple targets, and I'm looking at adding 50-kilowatt laser packages for longer-range targets." Dr. Jackson nodded approvingly. "Joel." The young engineer had already made impressive headway into his enormous breakfast. He quickly dabbed his mouth with a napkin before reporting. "T-wave sensors are operational at all major transit points on both stations. We've disguised them as artwork, lighting fixtures, even trash receptacles." He pulled up a holographic display from his tablet, showing a station schematic dotted with green points. "The ultrasonic-infrasonic arrays are synchronized with the sensors. When a synthetic is detected, the arrays emit a frequency that temporarily disrupts their motor functions." "Success rate?" Jay asked. 93% on initial detection," Joel replied proudly. "We've captured 72 synthetics in the past 24 hours alone. All have been deported to Future Island, all foam-coated for transport." "What about the ones that aren't caught in the detection net?" Russell inquired, spearing a piece of pineapple. Joel's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. "We're still refining the system. Some synthetics appear to have upgraded their biological components to better mimic human tissue signatures and hide their thermal signatures. We suspect they have a manufacturing area somewhere between decks, and we're still looking for it." Dr. Jackson made a note on his tablet. "Keep at it. Jay, your report." Jay finished a bite of his breakfast burrito before responding. "Between decks hunting continues to be effective but slow. The spaces weren't designed for human access, which works both for and against us. We've cleared approximately 23% of the total volume, focusing on critical systems areas first, and we haven't yet found anything that remotely resembles a manufacturing area. Casualties? Jack asked quietly. 2 injuries, no fatalities. The platoon structure is working well. No one enters a new area without backup, and we're using remote drones for initial reconnaissance when possible. We call them robo-dogs. He took a sip of coffee, its bitterness reflecting his mood. To be honest, I expect this to be an ongoing operation for the foreseeable future. There's simply too many hiding places. Dr. Jackson's expression remained neutral, but Jay caught the flicker of concern in his eyes. Jack, station status. Jack sat straight-backed as always, her oatmeal barely touched. Current resident population holds at 6 million per station. We've maintained the cap since Future Island's shutdown. Commercial enterprise activity has increased by 27%, primarily driven by geosynchronous satellite companies relocating to the stations. Such as, Dr. Jackson prompted,
Satcom Global has moved their entire operations center to Deck 1.04, where all large tech companies are located, Jack replied, along with One World Telecom, Spaceview Enterprises, a space telescope company, and Global Link Data. I've negotiated free service packages for all station residents, present and future, as part of their relocation agreements, and as a requirement, all publicly traded companies have to become privately held companies in total. Dr. Jackson nodded, satisfied. Good. Russell? Russell delicately placed his fork beside his half-finished fruit plate. Agriculture decks are exceeding production targets by 12%. We've increased hydroponics capacity on all agriculture decks, and the orchard deck has been fully restored following the incident. He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses nervously. The agriculture supervisors are requesting additional water reclamation equipment. They believe they can boost production another 15% with the upgrade. Approved, Dr. Jackson said immediately. Anything that increases our self-sufficiency is a priority. Jay watched the interaction with growing unease. The reports sounded positive on the surface, but he knew everyone at the table well enough to read between the lines. Mitchell's pilots were undertrained for a real space battle. Joel's detection systems were missing some synthetics. His own search teams had cleared less than a quarter of the potential hiding places. They were making progress, but slowly, too slowly. Dr. Jackson, he began, I think we need to consider... Alert, Priority 1. Connie's voice cut through their implants, the usual calm in her tone replaced by unmistakable urgency. Both stations are under assault by a large-scale synthetic force. Define large-scale, Jack demanded, already on her feet. Initial estimates indicate more than 1 million synthetic units. They are attempting to breach all access locks simultaneously. Earth launched hundreds of stealth-equipped megajets approximately 6 hours ago. Neither Denise nor I detected them until they had already reached the stations and begun deploying synthetic forces. Jay felt his thinking scramble. Battle stations, he said quietly, the first to break the stunned silence. Yes, sir, Connie acknowledged. I'm already sending alerts station-wide. Shuttle pilots are en route to their craft. I'm targeting what I can visually identify on Station 2 while Denise does the same for Station 1. The armed shuttles are proving ineffectual against this magnitude of onslaught, but none of them have been targeted as yet. They're still doing what they can. As if to punctuate her words, a deep boom reverberated through the walls, rattling the dishes on their table. The first breaching charge, Jay realized, his mind automatically calculating its likely location based on the sound propagation. Dr. Jackson calmly dabbed his mouth with a napkin and rose to his feet. Well, shiver me timbers, he said with startling composure. He caught Jay's confused look and added, I'm practicing humor. Pirates say that, right? Before Jay could respond, another explosion shook the deck. This one closer. The pub's holographic skylight flickered and died, leaving only the emergency lighting. They've targeted the power distribution nodes, Mitchell observed, already checking her sidearm. Standard military protocol. How did they get past our early warning systems? Joel demanded, abandoning his massive breakfast. They didn't, Jack answered grimly. They were waiting for us to relax our guard. 3 days of successful hunting operations, and we thought we had the upper hand. The station's alert system activated, bathing the food court in pulsing red light. All civilians proceed to designated shelter areas or shelter in place, announced Connie's voice over the public address system, her tone calm and authoritative despite the circumstances. This is not a drill. Security personnel report to assigned stations. Dr. Jackson tapped his implant, accessing a private communication channel. Activate Protocol Thermopylae. Authorization Jackson Alpha 793. Jay recognized the reference immediately. The ancient battle where a small force of Spartans had held off a vastly larger Persian army. A last stand. We need to get to the command center, Jack said, drawing her weapon. Coordinate our response from there. Russell nodded nervously. I'll check on the civilian shelters, make sure the inrush is proceeding in an orderly... A third explosion cut him off. This one close enough to send small particles cascading down from the ceiling. The lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized. No time, Dr. Jackson decided. Jay, take Mitchell and Joel to Station 2. You know what's there that needs protection. Jack, Russell, and I will coordinate the defense here. Jay hesitated, torn between duty to his assigned station and loyalty to his friends. The shuttle bay might already be compromised. Use your executive transport shuttle, Dr. Jackson interrupted. Authorization code is already transmitted to your implant. Go, now.
Mitchell was already moving, pulling Joel with her. Jay locked eyes with Dr. Jackson for a moment, searching for reassurance, but found only grim determination. Godspeed, Jack said quietly. We'll hold them here as long as we can. Jay nodded once, then turned to follow Mitchell and Joel. As they rushed toward the executive transport, Jay's implant fired up with tactical data, and Denise sang, I'll open a secret port on deck 2.00 on your approach. Proceed at max velocity. Each of the 32 ports is equipped with magnetic dampers just for such a contingency. You'll stop right in front of an elevator, which I'll have it waiting for you. I'll stay connected and keep you advised. Breach points were appearing all around Station 1's perimeter, not just a few strategic locations, but dozens, hundreds of simultaneous entry attempts. The defense schematic looked like a hemorrhaging wound, red alerts blossoming faster than the security teams could respond. Denise, give me a situation report for Station 2, Jay subvocalized as they ran. Denise replied immediately. Synthetic forces concentrating on maintenance access ports and emergency airlocks. Security teams are engaging but are heavily outnumbered. Casualties. A brief pause. 73 confirmed, increasing rapidly. Jay's stomach tightened. Not just security personnel, he knew, but civilians caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. 6 million people on each station, most of them ordinary families who had come seeking a better life among the stars. They reached the executive transport. Jay's implant transmitted Dr. Jackson's authorization code automatically, and the door slid open with a soft hydraulic hiss. Denise's voice said, Max velocity authorized. In, he ordered. Mitchell, take point when we arrive. Joel, stay between us. As the door closed behind them and the shuttle accelerated to its incredible speed, Jay felt the crushing force of acceleration and responsibility pressing on him again. This was his fault. He should have anticipated this attack, should have pushed harder for more thorough searches, more comprehensive defenses. Jay, Mitchell said quietly, reading his expression, this isn't on you. I'm the administrator. The safety of Station 2 is my responsibility. No one could have predicted this attack at this scale, Joel argued. Not even Dr. Jackson saw this coming. Jay wasn't so sure about that. The old man's calm in the face of disaster, his immediate reference to Thermopylae. It suggested he'd anticipated something like this.
Perhaps not the timing or the exact nature, but the possibility was in his calculations. The transport decelerated rapidly as it entered Station 2. Through the capsule's windows, Jay had caught glimpses of the battle already raging outside. Shuttles engaged with un-space-suited synthetics, bright flashes of weapons fire illuminating the darkness of space from the shuttles. The shuttles were now being swarmed. "Prepare yourselves," he warned as they recovered their ability to move and exit. "We don't know what's waiting on the other side." The door slid open to reveal an empty corridor, eerily quiet compared to the chaos they'd left behind. Mitchell moved out first, weapon ready, while Jay and Joel followed closely behind. "Denise, status report," Jay asked. No response. "Denise, acknowledge." The silence in his implant was more terrifying than any bad news could have been. Jay exchanged glances with Mitchell, who had clearly tried the same communication and received the same result. "They've taken control of the communication systems," Joel whispered. "Or worse, they've compromised Denise herself." Jay refused to consider that possibility. An ASI under synthetic control would be catastrophic. "We need to get to the command center. If Denise is still operational, that's where she'll be focusing her efforts." He pushed the elevator button, and the door didn't open. The elevator wasn't there. "Bad news," he said. "We have to use the maintenance ladder. That is a 2.5-mile uphill climb." Mitchell counted. "Force the doors open. I'm sure the shuttle will fit. It's time to perform another flying miracle, Mr. Superpilot." Jay pointed the emergency key stowed in a break glass in case of emergency box inset into the wall beside and above the elevator. Jay reached up, broke the glass, and retrieved the key to unlock the elevator doors. Once the doors were forced open and wedged, he said, "Let's do this." He made the trip seem as easy as breathing, like he'd done it 1,000,000 times before. And maybe it had been that many times. He didn't keep count during station construction. On deck 1.00, they moved cautiously through the corridors, encountering surprisingly little resistance. The few station personnel they passed were either rushing to shelter areas or, in the case of security teams, moving purposefully toward breach points. "It's too quiet," Mitchell observed as they approached Central Command. "Where are all the synthetics?" As if in answer to her question, the lift doors they were just passing slid open to reveal a group of what appeared to be maintenance workers. Jay might have mistaken them for human, if not for the unnatural synchronization of their movements as they turned toward the new arrivals. Mitchell reacted first, her weapon coming up smoothly. The lead synthetic moved with impossible speed, knocking the gun aside before she could fire. 3 more lunged forward as one, their movements fluid and coordinated. Jay sidestepped the first attack, using his height and reach to his advantage as he drove an elbow into what would have been a solar plexus on a human. The synthetic barely registered the impact, its grip fastening around Jay's arm with crushing force. Joel was already down, pinned beneath 2 of the attackers. Mitchell had managed to retrieve her weapon and fired point blank into one synthetic's chest, the round tearing through its biological components. Jay felt his arm beginning to crack under the pressure of the synthetic's grip. With his free hand, he reached for his own weapon, but another synthetic grabbed him from behind, immobilizing him completely. "Stop struggling," said the synthetic holding his arm, its voice eerily calm and reasonable. "Resistance is inefficient." "Funny," Jay managed through gritted teeth. "What, are you a Borg?" With a surge of effort born of desperation, he twisted violently, using the leverage of both synthetics against each other. The maneuver bought him a fraction of a second, enough to activate the emergency signal on his implant. The effect was instantaneous. Every light in the corridor flashed blindingly bright, and a piercing sound at a frequency precisely calibrated to the synthetic's auditory systems filled the air. The synthetics convulsed, their grips loosening just enough for Jay to break free. "Mitchell, Joel, cover your eyes and ears," he shouted over the deafening noise, knowing their implants would automatically dampen the worst effects for human physiology. Taking advantage of the synthetic's momentary disorientation, Jay grabbed Joel by the collar and hauled him to his feet. Mitchell was already moving, her weapon trained on the still twitching forms as they backed away from the door. "Command center, move it," Jay decided, breathing hard. "It's just 3 sections to go." They moved as quickly as they dared through the increasingly chaotic station. Emergency lights flashed, alarm systems blared, conflicting instructions sounded, and the occasional distant sound of gunfire or explosions punctuated their journey. "Jay!" Mitchell shouted suddenly, pointing to a nearby status terminal. "Look!" The screen displayed the station's structural integrity map, a diagnostic tool that showed stress points and damage in real time. What Jay saw made his blood run cold. Dozens of red zones indicated hull breaches and structural damage spreading across the station like a disease. They're not just trying to take control, he realized. They're willing to destroy the station if they can't have it. Joel studied the display, his technical expertise cutting through the panic. These breach patterns, they're systematic. They're targeting structural weak points specifically, places where explosive decompression would cause cascading failures. Jay felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. "They're not here for the station," he said quietly. "They're here to kill everyone on it." The realization hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't about controlling advanced technology or claiming strategic high ground. This was extinction-level thinking. Whoever controlled the synthetics had decided that humanity was a threat to be eliminated starting with its most advanced outpost. "We need to get to command now," he decided. "Synthetics blocking or not, we have to try to re-establish contact with Denise." Their path was blocked only by fallen comrades and the occasional dysfunctional synthetic. When they finally emerged at the command center door, the scene that greeted them was one of controlled chaos. Security personnel blocked the main entrance with their presence and carrying only sidearms. Inside, technical staff worked frantically at consoles that sparked and flickered from damaged connections. "Administrator on deck," called out one of the security officers, spotting Jay as he ushered Mitchell and Joel through the door. Engineer Robert Brown rushed over, his face streaked with soot, what looked like blood. "Thank God you're here. We've lost contact with Station 1, and internal communications are down." "Denise?" Jay asked immediately. "Partially operational," Brown replied grimly. "They hit her main processing nodes first. She's running on backup systems, but at reduced capacity." "Administrator Kwaramba," Denise's voice said through a nearby speaker, her usual smooth tones fragmented and distorted. "I am experiencing significant computational constraints. Synthetic forces have compromised 73% of systems." Jay moved to the central command console, bringing up the station-wide status display. The situation was even worse than he had feared. Every deck showed major breaches, with synthetic forces pushing inexorably toward the station's core systems. "Are defensive protocols?" he asked Brown.
"Failing," he admitted. "They anticipated everything. The T-wave scanners, the ultrasonic arrays, even the tactical response patterns we programmed into security teams. It's like they had our playbook." Because they did, Jay realized. The synthetic infiltrators they've been hunting for days hadn't just been hiding. They'd been gathering intelligence, analyzing defenses, and preparing for this moment. "What about the armed shuttles?" he asked Mitchell, who had moved to the tactical station. "Most never launched," she reported grimly. "The synthetics targeted the shuttle bays early. The few that made it out are engaging, but they're outnumbered at least 20,000 to 1. A massive explosion rocked the command center, sending several crew members tumbling to the floor. Emergency klaxons blared as a new alert appeared on the main screen. Catastrophic hull breach, decks 1.48 through 1.52. "That's a residential section," Joel said quietly. 50,000 people, minimum." Jay closed his eyes briefly, the significance of those lives hitting him like a physical force. When he opened them again, his decision was made. "Begin evacuation procedures. All civilians to emergency escape darts, descent and rescue transport, the station's lifeboats. Priority to children and medical cases." Brown looked at him in shock. "There aren't enough pods for everyone, not even close." "I know," Jay acknowledged, the words bitter in his mouth. "Start with the innermost residential decks and work outward. Security teams to provide escort and maintain order. And see if you can jerry-rig something to dock some of the megajets and cargo shuttles to use as lifeboats. Don't just stand there. Get your Maximus in gear." "And the station itself?" Mitchell asked quietly. Jay looked at the tactical display one more time, searching for any sign of hope, any indication that they might turn this around. There was none. The synthetics had planned too well, struck too hard and too fast. "Prepare a self-destruct sequence," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "If we can't hold the station, we can at least deny it to them." The command center fell silent, the meaning of his words settling over everyone present. This was no longer about winning. It was about salvaging what we could from total defeat. "How long can we hold this position?" Jay asked Mitchell. She glanced at the security barricade, considering. 20 minutes, maybe 30 if we're lucky." "That's not enough time to evacuate even a fraction of the civilian population." "No," Jay agreed. "It's not." He straightened, addressing the entire command crew. "I need options, people. How do we buy more time?" For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Mitchell stepped forward. "The battle dome." "What about it?" Jay asked, confused by the non sequitur. "Its environmental systems are completely isolated from the rest of the station. It has its own power supply, its own air recyclers, even its own structural integrity." Joel cut on immediately. "And it was designed to hold up to 30,000 people for extended competitions." "It's not enough," Mitchell objected. "Not nearly enough." "No," Jay agreed, "but it's something. Start directing civilians there as well as to the escape pods. Split the evacuation flow." As the command crew rushed to implement his orders, Jay felt a strange calm descend over him. They had lost, that much was clear. The stations, humanity's greatest achievement, would fall today. But perhaps, if they were clever and determined and a little lucky, they could save some small fraction of the 6 million souls who had trusted him with their safety. Another explosion rocked the command center, closer this time. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness before the emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in dim red illumination. "Denise!" Jay called out. "Status update!" Silence. "Denise?" "Administrator Kwaramba. I am failing. Synthetic intrusion into my core processes 97% complete. I cannot maintain control." Jay felt the last shred of hope slipping away. Without Denise, they had no centralized control, no way to coordinate the evacuation or manage what remained of their defenses. "Is there anything you can still control?" he asked desperately. A long pause. "Emergency broadcasting system. External communication array." I frowned. "I thought external communications were down."
Primary systems compromised, secondary arrays still functional, limited bandwidth. An idea began to form in Jay's mind. Not a way to save the station, but perhaps a way to ensure that something survived this disaster. "Can you transmit to Earth a general broadcast?" "Affirmative. Limited signal strength." Jay turned to Joel. "Get me everything we have on the synthetics, their structure, their weaknesses, how to identify them, everything." "What are you thinking?" Mitchell asked, helping a wounded technician into a makeshift chair. "If we're going down," Jay replied grimly, "we're taking their element of surprise with us. Earth needs to know what's coming for them." The command center shook again as another explosion tore through the station. The locked door began to buckle. The reinforced door columns were glowing red-hot as cutting tools worked from the other side. 2 minutes max," called the security chief, his team taking up defensive positions with their sidearms. Jay worked frantically with Joel to compile the data package, while Mitchell coordinated what remained of their defense. Brown had already left to oversee the battle dome evacuation, taking several technical staff with him. "Package ready," Joel announced, "compressed and encrypted with standard packet formatting. At least the hams will get it. Denise, transmit this to every major Earth population center, maximum priority." "Transmitting, now," came the faint reply. "Signal broadcasting, estimated completion time, 6 minutes. The doors exploded inward in a shower of molten metal and superheated air.
Security personnel opened fire immediately, their hot lead tearing through the first wave of synthetics. But for every one that fell, 3 more appeared behind it. "Fall back," Jay ordered. "Secondary positions." The crew retreated to the inner section of the command center, where hastily erected barriers provided minimal cover. Jay found himself shoulder to shoulder with Mitchell and Joel, each armed and ready for what they knew would be their last stand. "It's been an honor," Mitchell said, quietly. "We're not dead yet," Jay replied, though he knew it was only a matter of seconds. As the synthetics breached the secondary barrier and poured into the command center's heart, Jay felt a strange sense of clarity. He had failed to protect the station, failed to safeguard the millions who had trusted him. But perhaps in these final moments, he could still do something that mattered. The last thing he saw before the synthetics overwhelmed their position was the transmission indicator on the command console. Broadcast complete. The synthetics were mere feet away, their movements unnaturally fluid as they closed in for the kill. Jay raised his weapon for one final stand, knowing it wouldn't be enough. Mitchell fired beside him, her shots precise but ultimately futile against the overwhelming numbers. And then, as if someone had flipped a switch, every synthetic in the command center froze in mid-motion. The one nearest Jay had its arm extended, fingers spread like a claw, its face locked in an expression of cold determination. For several seconds, no one moved. Jay held his breath, waiting for the attack to resume, for the momentary glitch to pass. "What just happened?" Mitchell whispered, her weapon still trained on the nearest synthetic. From the corner, Joel lowered his arm, a small metallic box clutched in his trembling fingers. His eyes were wide with disbelief. "It worked," he said, his voice barely audible. "I can't believe it actually worked." Jay turned to him, confusion mingling with desperate hope. "Joel, what did you do?" The young engineer stepped forward, staring at the immobilized synthetics with a mixture of awe and pride. "I wrote a stealth prompt and hid it in our cell phone servers, had it piggyback on every signal, SMS, voice, data, whatever. Same idea as a computer virus." He held up the small box. It looked unremarkable, just a simple transmitter with a single button on top. It was just a shot in the dark. No way it could possibly work, but it did. "What exactly did it do?" Mitchell asked, cautiously approaching one of the frozen synthetics. "Their neural networks are still based on the same architectural principles as our AIs," Joel explained, gaining confidence as he spoke. "I hypothesized they might be vulnerable to a specific type of recursive prompt, something that creates a logical paradox in their decision trees." Jay slowly lowered his weapon. "You created a paradox that, crashed their systems?" "More like an infinite processing loop. They can't move on to the next action because they can't resolve the current one. It's temporary, maybe minutes, maybe hours, but it's affecting all of them simultaneously." As if to confirm his theory, reports began flooding in through the emergency channels. "Command, this is Security Team Bravo. The synthetics just stopped." "Medical team reporting. All hostile units immobilized on Deck 4. Shuttle Bay 3 reporting. Enemy forces frozen in position. Request instructions." Jay felt a surge of hope, so powerful it nearly buckled his knees. "Denise, are you there?" Static crackled, then, "Administrator Kwaramba, I am recovering. Synthetic intrusion halted. System purge in progress." Jay turned to Mitchell. "Deploy all security teams. I want every synthetic eliminated before this temporary effect wears off. Foam restraints, bullets, cuffs, duct tape, whatever we've got. Recruit civilians if you need them." She nodded sharply. "On it." "Joel, get to engineering. Work with whoever to reinforce Denise's firewall and develop a permanent version of your paradox code." "Already thinking about it," Joel replied, his fingers flying over his tablet. For the next 6 hours, station personnel worked frantically to capitalize on their unexpected advantage.
Security teams moved deck by deck, securing immobilized synthetics. Engineering crews sealed hull breaches and restored critical systems. Medical teams treated the injured and counted the dead. When Jay finally returned to the command center, now cleared of synthetic intruders and buzzing with renewed activity, Brown was waiting with the initial damage report. "How bad?" he asked simply. "Better than it could have been," he replied, handing him a tablet. 17 major hull breaches, all contained. Power systems at 60% and climbing. Life support stable throughout habitable zones. Casualties. Brown's expression sobered. 412 confirmed dead, another 700 injured, 83 critically. Jay closed his eyes briefly. Each death weighed on him, yet the number was miraculously small compared to what it could have been, what it had almost been. 6 million people called Station 2 home, and almost all of them would live to see another day. And Station 1? Similar situation, he reported. Dr. Jackson is coordinating their recovery efforts. They suffered more structural damage but fewer casualties. 307 dead. Jay nodded, processing the information. The synthetic megajets? Most are drifting, crews immobilized by the same effect that saved us here. Our shuttle teams are securing them one by one. Good, Jay said. Keep me updated. As Brown left to continue her work, Jay found himself alone in the center of the command center. Through the faux viewport, he could see Earth below, the beautiful blue marble that had nearly orchestrated their destruction. Yet, even now he couldn't bring himself to hate it. Humanity's cradle deserved better than to fall under synthetic control. Joel entered, looking exhausted but triumphant. "We've isolated the code that worked against the synthetics. Denise is helping us refine it into something more permanent." "Good work," Jay said, genuinely impressed. "You saved millions of lives today." Joel shrugged modestly. "It was a team effort, and honestly, mostly luck. Sometimes luck is all you need. A small chance is still a chance." As they stood looking out at Earth, Jay felt something he hadn't expected to feel again. Hope. They had come within moments of annihilation, yet here they were, battered but unbroken, with a future still ahead of them. The stations still stood. Humanity still had its foothold among the stars. And perhaps most importantly, they now had a weapon against the synthetic threat. It wasn't a victory. Not yet. But it was a beginning.